I'm Stephen Strang from Charisma Media, and I've been asked by the ministry to share my thoughts about Morris Cerullo on his passing in July of 2020. As you can see, I'm in the podcast studio here at Charisma Media. I just recorded one of my podcasts, The Strang Report, on the Charisma Podcast Network. I was able to go into more depth about my experiences with him. I knew him since the 1970s. I actually covered a meeting in my hometown of Orlando, Florida. It was across the street from where Universal Studios is now. I just happened to remember that. And at that point, even though I was in my early 20s, I knew about his ministry. He was already kind of an icon. I can remember being excited just to be able to go to his ministry. And then over the years in my role as the editor of Charisma magazine, as I was able to go to meetings of ministers, I went to several kind of roundtable meetings. I remember that Kenneth Hagin Sr. and Fred Price and some of those men were at a particular meeting, and I got to meet Morris Cerullo personally and talk to him. And then later, I went out to his ministry in San Diego and was able to have a meal with he and his lovely wife and tour his facilities. There was a period of time in which his ministry took over the PTL grounds, I guess you'd call it, there in Charlotte. And I went up there. I wrote stories about it. I can remember having interviews with him in hotels when he'd be in town for a meeting. I got to go to a lot of his conferences, was able to publish a couple of his books. And of course, we put him on the cover of Charisma magazine. He was a great man. He really was. And in my role, I've been able to know almost all of the giants of our faith, of our generation, and he was certainly one of the greatest. As I read kind of his obituary on my podcast, I was just stunned with the statistics of all he accomplished in his 88 years on earth. And we know that when he went into heaven, God said to him, "Well done, good and faithful servant." I know that hundreds of thousands and perhaps millions of people are in the kingdom of God and in heaven today because of his passion for souls and his vision. I've never known anyone more focused on what God had called him to do. It was an honor to know him personally and now to say goodbye to him and to add my thoughts. I hope I've added to the others that have shared their thoughts too. If you're interested in more of what I said, you can check out my Strang Report podcast. We had a number of articles on charismanews.com. But I just wanted to say from the bottom of my heart how much I loved him, appreciated him, respected him, appreciate the relationship that I have to this day with his son, David, who's done a great job with the Inspiration Network, and got to know his wife, Teresa, a great woman of God. Think of how she stood by him all these years, 69 years of marriage, had he lived just a few more weeks. So they didn't tell me how long to make this, but I know it needs to be short. So there's so much more that could be said and should be said. But I just hope that the sincerity of my remarks come through, because I really did love and appreciate this great man of God, Morris Cerullo.